There's a forgotten field expedient power trick soldiers used during the Second World War. One so simple and, well, so rugged that it still works today. It required no proper batteries, no fuel, no generators, and no specialized parts. It used two things soldiers always had around: rust. Metal and vinegar. For the first minute, it's worth setting the stage for why this mattered. Wartime patrols often depended on low-level lights for map reading, signal lamps, and small communication devices. But batteries were unreliable, especially in cold climates or prolonged campaigns where supply lines were stretched thin. Soldiers sometimes went days or weeks without access to fresh cells. When a lamp died, that could mean losing navigation capability, medical readiness, or the ability to signal quietly at night. So troops improvised a power source using rusted iron fragments scavenged from scrap and the acidic rations they carried in their packs. What they created wasn't a long-term battery, but a short-burst emergency power source that produced just enough current to run dim field lights, charge simple lamps, and power low-demand gear long enough to complete a mission. So, the reason this trick works? Well, it actually lies in the chemistry that soldiers unknowingly exploited. Vinegar, you see, contains acetic acid, a mild but electrically active acid that reacts quite strongly with oxidized iron. Now, when rusted iron and a more reactive metal, often zinc, galvanized steel, or even just a shaving of aluminum, were placed together in vinegar, the acetic acid acted as an electrolyte. The rusted iron served as the positive electrode, while the more reactive metal acted as the negative one. As electrons flowed from one metal to the other, the soldiers, perhaps without even realizing it, created a functioning galvanic cell. It wasn't high voltage, mind you, but it produced enough usable current to push a small incandescent bulb, or to revive devices that were almost dead. In some cases, soldiers daisy-chained multiple makeshift cells to produce a larger voltage, building what really amounted to a temporary battery pack from scrap canteen vinegar and battlefield debris. A practical example from the North African campaign shows, just how critical this method became in those harsh environments. Desert conditions absolutely destroyed battery life. The heat during the day and the cold at night, well, they really wreaked havoc on those early dry cells. Patrol units who needed to check their bearings at night, well, they often found their lamps dead. One British patrol, thinking on their feet, improvised a usable power supply using rust scraped from an abandoned vehicle chassis and canteen vinegar from their daily ration. They packed the mixture in a small tin, added a strip of zinc from a torn battery casing, and wired it to a failing lamp. The light flickered, dimmed, then steadied just enough to, illuminate a map. The men got their direction, completed their march, and recorded the trick as a reliable fallback. Stories like this were, pretty common among units stationed far from supply hubs, and while official manuals didn't teach the technique, soldiers in the field passed it through word of mouth. The science behind why rust actually improves the reaction is, unique and important to understand. Rust is iron oxide, and iron oxide has a different electrical potential than raw metal. When immersed in vinegar, it helps create a more efficient voltage difference between electrodes. The oxidized surface also increases contact area, letting the acetic acid work faster. Soldiers often learned that the rustier the metal, the better the output. Some even accelerated the process by scraping or scoring the surface to expose fresh rust layers, or by letting iron tools intentionally oxidize when they anticipated needing emergency power. Now, the modern application of this World War II trick is, well, surprisingly practical for anyone interested in survival, bushcraft, or off-grid preparedness. The basic setup only requires 3 items: a container, which could be anything from a tin can to a plastic cup, a piece of rusted iron, and a piece of zinc, aluminum, or galvanized steel. And, of course, vinegar acts as the electrolyte. To use it, you just place the rusted iron in the container and submerge it in vinegar. Then put the more reactive metal beside it, making sure they don't touch directly. Connect wires to each piece of metal. The instant the metals sit in the vinegar, the reaction kicks off and a small current is produced. This can actually run a low-demand LED, revive a nearly dead battery by trickle charging, or even power a simple radio. Folks who practice off-grid living often recreate this cell to really understand how to generate electricity without having to buy any specialized equipment. It's especially useful in rural areas where abandoned iron scraps are common and, where vinegar is easy to store long-term. A more advanced version of the method used by soldiers involved building multiple small cells and connecting them in series for a higher voltage. The principle is simple, really. Each rust and vinegar cell produces a small voltage, typically under 1 volt. By creating several cells in separate compartments and linking the positive end of one to the negative end of the next, you accumulate voltage. This is how soldiers powered larger bulbs or early communication gear. Modern users can replicate this using several small tins or jars arranged in a row. In a field emergency, even a string of 4 or 5 cells is enough to power a miniature lamp or send a radio signal. Because vinegar does not evaporate quickly and rusted metal is abundant, such a system can be assembled quickly under pressure. Another practical example comes from cold climates, where soldiers found they could warm the vinegar to increase output. Acids react faster at higher temperatures. Troops stationed in winter environments learned that keeping the vinegar warm under a jacket or near a canteen heater, significantly improved the current their improvised battery produced. This is a detail modern users often forget, but honestly, it makes the difference between a weak flicker and a steady glow. The value of this rust and vinegar method today is not nostalgia. It's independence from manufactured power sources. It demonstrates that electricity can be created with simple chemistry, not complicated gear. It reinforces a larger truth that wartime ingenuity often outperforms modern convenience because it forces people to work with what they have, not what they wish they had. For preppers, historians, and practical thinkers, This trick remains one of the most resourceful examples of field-adapted technology from the World War II era. If you found this guide informative and want more deep dives into forgotten wartime methods with real modern applications, make sure you subscribe to In the Beginning and share this video so others can learn these skills and preserve this knowledge.